Well, hello, and welcome to episode 9 of the Bomb City Podcast. This episode is my interview with Brian Jennings of Kustoms By Jennings out in Concord, California. We recorded this interview out at his day job, Bay Auto, out in Concord, California, a shop that he's worked at for almost 20 years. It was a pretty cool place. I mean, his dad, Kirk Jennings' shop is just next door, and there's a few other custom car builders in the area too. So it was pretty neat to see those guys work together. In fact, at a few times during the interview, people would stop in and ask questions like they would any other day. And it was neat to see that dynamic there. I had a great time getting to know him. Not only is he a custom car painter and builder, but he's also a pretty successful motorcycle drag racer. So we had a lot to talk about. Brian's a great guy. I had a good time getting to know him, having a chat with him, and I really had a fun time listening to this one when I was putting it together, so I hope you guys enjoy it too. So here it is, episode 9, Brian Jennings. Thank you so much for listening.
My name is Brian Jennings. I'm 35 years old, from Martinez, California. I got into the trade because of my father, Kirk Jennings, who had Kirk's Body Works in Martinez for 15 years. And I grew up in a body shop, sweeping floors, spraying primer on stuff that I wasn't supposed to, and getting in trouble. And then I went ahead and went through high school, always loved cars. When I was 16, my dad and myself bought a 1966 Oldsmobile Cutlass convertible, and that was my first introduction into the custom world. Towed the car home as a non-runner. The car was filled to the gills with trash. Got home, and my dad's style was to clean and vacuum and detail the turd as it was to see where we were at. And so I went ahead and did that, and shut that. And first order of business was getting it running, so we put the old mystery oil down it, and new plugs, wires, cap rotor, all that good stuff, and she fired right up, went forward and backwards. And so I think my first project on that car was I did disassemble the top of the motor, wire wheeled and cleaned, pressure washed, rattle can the motor back gold, satin black the inside of the fender wells, and that was kind of my first project. And at the time I was huge into baseball. I was playing baseball year round for the Lafayette Generals in the summer and Los Lomos High School. And so my dad gave me the old DA and said, okay, start ripping it back. So I started DAing that thing, and my dad would come behind me with his custom touches. He welded all the fender extensions to the car, which was pretty tricky because the fender extensions were cast pot metal. So I got to watch him do that. He also then took the bumpers and shaved the bumper bolts so it had the floating effect. And at the time, in the mid to late 90s, a monochromatic car was still semi-acceptable, so not having money for chrome, the bumpers went ahead and the car was finished off in a real light gray primer epoxy, very nice and smooth, had some shine to it, so the bumpers got epoxied just the same as the outside of the car. And my dad rounded both door corners, front and back, lower front, lower rear, shaved the door handles. And I think that was about all the modifications that he got. And then my dad did all the body work. Yeah. I wasn't involved in that because I was playing ball, going to school, and didn't really know about it. I mean, I'd seen it a lot, but that was my dad's forte, was metal and slinging mud. And then funny thing is that the shop I'm at now, Bay Auto Body, that I've been here 18, 19 years now, this is where my car got primed when I was a kid, because my dad knew Todd, the owner of Bay Auto Body, and so they brought it down here and primed it. And after the car was primed, I took the dash apart and sanded that all down, and my boss that I work for now actually painted it pearl white for me, because we envisioned painting the car pearl white. That never happened. The car got sold when I went off to Chabot Junior College to play baseball, and just didn't think that was going to be a good car to commute in, and worried about people stealing it, so I figured better sell it than have it be stolen. And so time goes by, I get a little S10 when I turn, 16, 17. And my dad, same thing, helped me lower it, torque thrusters, exhaust, and that was my first dabbling in paint. I painted all my lower chin spoilers and mirrors and stuff like that, and had a cool little car for a high school kid, you know, or trucks, I guess. And then continued playing ball for the next 2 years at Chabot College, and after that I was tired and ready to move on, and so I asked my dad where I could go to get a job, since my dad had closed down his shop and gone to work for another shop, being a general manager. And he told me to come see Todd over at Bay Auto Body in Concord, California. And he said he's one of the last good men in the trade, and he thought that would be a good place for me to start. And so at the time, he wasn't hiring, so I went to work for another shop. Got my feet wet, did a bunch of prepping, priming, blocking, you know, a little bit of everything. So even though the shop wasn't the place for me to land for forever, it was definitely a good start to just learn a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
And then as time went on, I went back over to Todd and told him that I'd like to learn how to paint. And he was pretty excited since he was painting and trying to run the business, check in parts, write estimates, answer phones, and he wasn't very efficient in getting cars painted.
Yeah, he was the only painter here when he first...
Yeah, he was the owner and painter. Yeah,
it's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. And this shop, Bay Auto Body's always been roughly 6 guys. It's been a small shop. And I like the feel of the small shop because I truly believe that we get to do better quality work than a bigger collision shop, because there's less hands touching it, and I feel the less people that work on a car, sometimes the better. Things don't get overlooked. And Todd is a stickler for quality and likes to put out good work, and that's what I'm about, so that was a good fit for us, is coming here and kind of got under his wing, and he showed me, you know, mixing and measuring and color matching and priming and blocking, and then you know, he'd throw me a bone, tell me to go paint a bumper, go jam the underside of the hood, and I guess he liked what he was seeing, and then he kind of just let me loose. And so for 14 years I was the head painter, in control of the prep work and all that stuff. So
you have a quart of oil around here, do you?
No.
Huh?
We're doing an interview right now.
Oh,
Let's go.
Okay.
That's no problem.
I don't think I have any oil around. The best place would be like up there or on the side of the wall over here.
Thank you, sorry.
That guy Jimmy that just walked in on us, he worked for my father at Kirk's Body Works as a painter.
Uh-huh.
And when I came to work here, he brought over a picture, and that picture was of me as a little tiny boy, and he was the first one to ever hold a spray gun in my hand.
Wow.
And we reconnected when I was a lot older, and he has a shop around back.
That's cool.
He's still going hard in it, painting, and you know, but
you guys have a nice little community over here.
yeah, we do. It's everybody just kind of floats from shop to shop, and if we don't have something, they probably do, or vice versa. So it's kind of cool to have other shops in the area, and there's no real competition, you know. If somebody comes by here looking for JJ's auto painting, we send them back there. We don't try to take it, and vice versa. It happens all the time.
Cool. It's the way it should be, right?
Right. People come in and they don't know where they're going, and it's like, you know, there are people that would be like, oh, well, I can do it for you, but we all just know our place, and you know, if you're looking for us and you go see Jimmy, he's going to send us, and vice versa. So anyways, that's a little off subject, but good guy, worked for my father and was actually the first one to ever hold a spray gun in my hand and have me in the paint booth painting. Little did I know I'd be doing it for a living.
Yeah.
A lot of years later. So anyways, I was painting full time here, collision, one of the few shops that'll still take on a restoration job, and so I was doing a lot of completes. I would say the most restored car that I've ever done here at this shop is definitely 67 through 69 Camaro. I've probably done 12 to 15 of them in my lifetime here. And So I painted a lot, did a lot of work. When I figured out painting and got it down and I understood chemical and how things worked, that's when I realized that my artistic ability that I'd always had in school, for all my elective classes, I took art. There was no Spanish, there was no algebra 15. I was all about art, and, thankfully my parents, realized how passionate I was about any kind of art, the 3D art, drawing, sculpting, anything. I was into it. So I took a lot of art through school as my elective classes, and it kind of paid off in the end. I was doing it so I didn't have to take Spanish and math and all that stuff. I mean, there was definitely that part of me. But once I figured out the painting process, I was like, shit, dude, I can do graphics on cars, like rolling tattoos, I was like, I can do this. So I started playing around with just little stuff that I had at my house, wakeboard decks, just anything I could get my hands on to practice and paint and play around with. And so that's kind of how I got into panel painting and pinstriping and that kind of work was, going through school and knowing that I was decent at art. And I do think that it's a really good thing that I learned from the bottom up, because as I've told you before, there's so many good artists out there, but sometimes their preparation and their finished work isn't the greatest because they don't come from an auto body background.
Right.
And there's a lot of artists that don't come from that kill it and do a great job. So I mean, you got both sides of the spectrum, but it was good for me to learn how to create a foundation that wasn't going to fall and how to finish a job so it looked really nice when it was done.
Yeah.
And so I think my first big job was on my wife-to-be's truck. She had a 92 GMC standard cab pickup truck, and she got into an accident. And it came into the shop, and the paint job on it was silver, and it was pretty bad. It was definitely done in somebody's garage or something. And so we fixed the truck, and I talked my boss into letting me color sand the whole truck down and repaint it. And so while I had it in the paint booth, that was my first ever car that I ever did graphics on, and I did a full flame job on the hood to the back of the doors. And looking back on it, it was pretty... she loved it. Her father loved it. Her father took that truck more than she did, and I did the flames in a Ghost, in a Pearl, because at the time my skills at pinstriping were nowhere near where they needed to be to stripe a full flame job. So I did them in Pearl, so I didn't have to stripe, and they look cool, man. I was happy, and it all turned out decent. I would do a lot of things different now, but that just comes with experience, and then. I just kept doing more and more stuff, and then I figured out that motorcycles was a good money maker. I mean, everybody with a Harley wanted some sort of a design, graphic, flames, and
everyone that's learning lays it down eventually.
Yeah. So I started picking up the motorcycle jobs, and that was great because it was something that I could take home, work on at the kitchen counter, and bring it back and shoot it, and then take it back and stripe it, and so that's kind of I guess where my reputation starts is from motorcycles.
Yeah. How'd you get into drag racing?
Well, I've always my father was always a big fan of the NHRA and always took me to drag races as a kid, and I love the speed, the smells, the people.
Where would you guys race at?
Well, we race now. My home track is Sonoma Raceway.
All right.
Sacramento, I race a lot there as well. And then for the bigger races, we go to LA, Vegas, Phoenix, Utah. And as time's gone on, and I've got better at riding the bike and racing and understanding what bracket racing is all about. So. It's and I was raised around motorcycles. My dad's been a true Harley, fan his whole life. Had nothing but Harleys, and when I first got my first motorcycle, I brought it home, and he says, "Where are you gonna put that?" And I said, "In the garage." He says, "You're not gonna put that Japanese thing in my garage." Of course, he let me put it in the garage, and I think I scared the shit out of both him and my mom having a bike at 20 years old, a street bike. And I would come home late, and they'd still be awake, and I'd be like, why are you guys awake? Oh, we can't go to sleep until we know you're home safe. Well, I thought that was a crock until I had my own kids, and now I understand, how important it is and how much, the love you have for your children and wanting them to be safe. So, my drag racing kind of started on that bike. It was a little Honda CBR 600, and I would take it up on Wednesday nights to the street legal drag races and drag race, and it was just more for the thrill of the speed and getting to bang through gears and not having to be chased down by police. And so that's kind of how I got my start. And then I sold that bike and bought a GSXR 1100, which was a huge jump. And it was all stretched and lowered and kind of set up for like a street strip bike. And that was definitely one of those bikes that I bought, and I should have never bought it. And so I ended up painting that bike, and that was when the real fire came out, man, and I was all about it and watching videos, and so I did my bike black and real fired the whole thing, and was racing that. And I with no wheelie bar on the bike, launching it off the starting line was a little bit sketchy. And so I rode that for a while, and I had a pretty close call. I was going down the track, and I was in like third gear, and I blew a high pressure oil line that ran between the header, and it burned a hole through it. Wow. And it spit oil out all over me, all over the bike, the tires, the track. I was skating down the track, and I just told myself, just hold on and let it do what it's got to do. And thankfully I didn't hit the pavement, and I came back, and I was green, real green at the time, and I had a lot of fellow bike racers that had been doing it for a long time saying that they couldn't believe that I didn't crash because they've seen people get a drop of oil on their tire and wad it up. So at that point in my life, I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to get a purpose-built bike. And so I still had the GSXR, obviously. Me being a prideful do-it-yourselfer, I said, I'm going to build my own. Worst mistake ever. But before I built this bike, I was going to go race in Sacramento with my father. It was all Harley drag race, but they let the imports in there. They had a class for the imports. And I had runnered up the year before, so I was kind of excited to go back and see if I could win the deal. Well, I was... at the time, that's when I was building my first car, was a 50 Chevy two-door. And I built it over at my friend's house. He had a shop behind his house, and he wasn't a shop guy, he wasn't a car guy, and he just happened to buy a house with a shop in the back of it. Yeah. And he says, you're more than welcome to build a car here. And yeah, that was huge. I mean, the thing had a hoist, had stuff that I needed to take a body off and do a frame. And so in return for him letting me do that, I went over there one day and I helped him clean up his yard and mow lawns and pick up crap and just help the guy out, because I was very appreciative that he let me build that car there. Well, in doing that, we were drinking all day. We were drinking beer and having a good time, listening to music, shirts off, mowing lawns, weed eating. Well, I said, hey, my wife called me, Tessa, and she wants to have you over for dinner, just come over. She's going to make fried chicken and this and that. And he's like, yeah, right on. I'll be over in a little bit. I'm going to shower. So I took off, and anyways, he comes over to the house, and I said, man, you got to hear the bike, dude. I said, I got it tuned up, ready to rock for this weekend. And so I fired it up, and one hit of that race fuel in my nose, I said, man, I'm going to go. I'm going to go do some burnouts. And he's like, yeah, okay, cool. So I'm in shorts, t-shirt, tennis shoes, no gloves, no helmet, and I go out front and I'm doing burnouts up and down the street. And my wife is out front with our brand new 6-month-old baby, Morgan. And I've always been an advocate of safety. I always like a full face helmet. I always like gloves, and that comes from my father. My father always rode, for the fact that, you know, if shit does go bad, you know, let's give ourselves the best chance to survive. Well, I guess when you got a little booze in your system, that goes all out the window. And I rode past my wife after doing 2 burnouts up and down the street, and she's watering the lawn, and she's got the baby in her arms, and she looks at me and she shakes her head like, "You idiot, what are you doing?" And I just gave her the shit-eating grin, and I thought, well, I'm probably pressing my luck here, so I'm going to do it one more time. So I ride past her, she shakes her head, I go down to the stop sign, I come back, and I went ahead, and the tire was nice and sticky, and I whacked that thing at about 40 miles an hour, and it came up and stood straight up, and it came up so fast, and I tried to pull the clutch in, and I looped it right in front of the house. Should have been dead. If I didn't go anywhere but down the middle of the road, if I would have went into a car or into a house, shit could have been different. But I laid it out, and all I remember was seeing the black of the pavement and the blue of the sky and black and pavement, and it was just like being in a washing machine. And my wife said, "You never even stopped." I just took off running after the bike. The bike was sliding up the street and oiled down the whole middle of the street, looked like a forest fire, and picked that bike up and put it in the garage and walked around in a circle for about 15 minutes and looked down at myself and went, "Oh my God." I had no skin on my palms. I had no skin on my forearms. I burned a giant hole through my hip area. Both my legs on the insides were just completely thrashed as I went down trying to keep my face off. Banged up my head a little bit. So I thought the police would come. I thought I was going to jail. Well, that never happened, so that was good. And my wife was crying hysterically. And I spent 3 days in my house and never went to the hospital. Funny thing is my wife works for John Muir Hospital. We have the best healthcare benefits known to man. My mom, 20 some odd years, John Muir. So I was just being hard-headed. And it took me 3 days to finally call my dad. And I said, "Dad, we're not going racing this weekend." He says, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I wadded the shit up in the front of the house." And he goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Well, yes and no." So they came over that night, and my mom started crying. She says, "If you lose your limbs because of infection, you're stupid, blah, 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 blah." So got the old ride to the hospital for my dad. 3 days of healing, they scraped it all back off. X-rays, and that was disastrous. So here I am, I healed up from it, and my wife told me that I was never going to ride that bike ever again. And then I had the incident on the racetrack after that with it popping the high pressure oil line. And so that's when I said, I'm going to build this bike into a drag bike. Okay. So I spent all my money, bought all the best shit, put this bike on the track, which is that one up there, the real nice looking one. And I'd never been on a full-on drag bike, and it's a whole different ballgame. You got wheelie bars, you leave at full power, and it's like riding a rocket. And first time I went up there, put it on full throttle, went to let the clutch out, and the bike just went and bogged. Darn near smacked my helmet off the handlebars and down the track. Long story short, I never really got that bike working right. When I did get it working right, I had the same disaster as that Sonoma. It was in a qualifying pass. Hit third gear. I heard an awful noise. I pulled the clutch in. There was smoke. There was oil. I ended up sticking the number 3 rod right out the front of the motor and ruined everything. The only thing I saved out of the motor was the transmission. So then I bought another bike, a Vance & Hines GS 1100 in 1981, and it's been the best thing I've ever bought.
Yeah.
To put it in perspective, I spent $20,000 building my own bike, and I bought this bike for $3,000, and it's got me every win and accolade in my career. You know, it's a 9-second bike, 138 miles an hour. It's a great bracket bike, and so my passion for motorcycles definitely comes from my father, and you know, I guess the need for speed.
Yeah. And I think after wrapping the bike like that, most people would have hung it up for good.
Yeah. It was definitely nerve-wracking to get back on it, but it was just it was something I was dead set on. It was something that I always wanted to do. As a kid, when my dad took me to the drag races, all I ever wanted to watch was the pro stock motorcycles. I just thought it was so cool, and So that's how I got into drag racing, and that's my true passion. I do love the cars. I love working on them and creating, but at the end of the day, if there's a car show or a drag race, you won't see me at the car show. You may see my car because my dad or somebody may take it, but so that was hard. When I got the 60 Chevy done, I missed 2 races. We had a doubleheader, and I missed 2 races to go to Santa Maria, and that killed me. I did have a great time with the family, and it did make it a little sweeter that my father's Cadillac and the Biscayne won in the same class for top 5 mile customs out of 850 cars, not in our class, but total. That was a huge accomplishment, especially finishing the car the night before at 2:45 in the morning and loading it into a trailer and getting it down there.
Well, let's talk about the 60 for people who aren't familiar with it. I'm sure you've seen pictures of it by now. It's the different colors of blue, paneled 60 Biscayne with a custom front end, back end, molded everything. You were telling me earlier the story about how you brought it home. You want to?
Yeah, so I at the time I had the 50 Chevy, which was my first car, and that was the rat rod craze. So the body was all broached out, bare metal, but I did the frame all candy pagan gold and motor and airbags, and so I had a little extra money, and I was cruising Craigslist, and I saw this 60 Biscayne, and the guy posted a picture up of the car, and he also posted up a picture of what it could look like. So I saw the ad on Craigslist, and the guy posted up a picture of a white one that was all done up and had been in street rodder or something like that, and I was like, man, that's got potential. Now, it wasn't done the way I thought, but it was more done street rod, billet wheels, had a rake to it, nice motor, all white, had all the trim, everything on it, no custom modifications, but I thought, wow, that's a pretty cool car. So I went out to South San Francisco and I bought this thing for $5,000, and it was a complete car. It had rust in the quarters. It had no floorboards in it. It had some tin put over it so I could drive it home, and it had a Honda Civic seat in it, ratty door panels, but for the most part it was all there. And so I thought, well, I'll just buy this car and keep it in stock, So the car, I drove it home, and I made it home to my friend's house where I had built the 50 Chevy, and he was going to let me keep it there for a while. And I pulled in the driveway, and the right rear tire popped, and we were just happy we made it home and didn't have that happen on the Bay Bridge. That was cool. So time goes by, and it sits over there, it sits at my parents' house, gets no love whatsoever. And then my parents decided to sell and retire in Arizona, so they said, hey, you got to get this car out of here. So I went and picked it up and drove it home, tinkered with it a little bit, cut the springs, put it on the ground, had these horrible red rally wheels on it. It was terrible. Big old tire balloons on it. So I wasn't really trying to put any money into it at the time. I was just playing around with it. And I had sold the 50 Chevy, so that was my only ride, And then I brought it down to my shop here, Bay Auto Body, and my dad said, Brian, don't take it all apart. Just do one panel at a time. That way you can enjoy it, drive it, this and that. And I didn't listen, and I went ahead and popped the windshield and the back glass out, and that's kind of how it all started. It became inoperable and couldn't drive it on the street since I had pulled all that shit out, and so I started one panel at a time, and did the rust repair in the quarters, and at that time I de-trimmed it and knew I was going to shave the whole car. Part of that, obviously the door handle's got to go for a mild custom in my mind, and then some of the trim on the car was really nice, and I thought about keeping it, but I also was budget minded, having a wife and 2 kids, so I said, shit, the more I shave off this, the less I gotta polish and chrome and do that. So, and that was kind of my theory behind that at the time. And so the first modification I did on it was I cut the side scoops into the quarters, and made my mesh inserts and welded the round rod on the outside instead of the inside, and I got nothing but shit about that from my dad and other people that had done it, and told me, son, that round rod's supposed to be on the inside, and I said, well, I did it on the outside, and that's how it's going to be. And so later on in life, when I was in Santa Maria talking to Pat Ganal, he said he's seen every side scoop treatment known to man on that car, and he gave me a big compliment by saying that that's the best side scoop he's ever seen, in his opinion. And so kind of made me feel better after thinking about this all this time, that I'd done something that wasn't what other people thought it should be.
It turned out totally cool. That's one of my favorite things about the car.
And so at the time, I put the expanded metal in there, and I doubted myself on that over the years. Like, man, is it too new looking for a 60s custom? But they were done, and I wasn't going back. So then after that, my dad helped me shave the door handles, and I welded up a bunch of holes down the side of that thing, and going around back, I decided that I wanted to weld the stainless onto the deck lid and the quarter fin so that it would give it an extension. And there again, those are always beat up on those cars from people running into things. So I hammered those things out and welded them to the car and molded those in. Got rid of the emblem on the trunk and the lock cylinder hole.
You smoothed out the coat back there too, right?
Yeah. So on the Biscayne, obviously, instead of 3 taillights on each side, it's got 2, and in that panel it has 3 like bead rolled grooves in it, and so I went ahead and got rid of those just to clean it up, and spent a lot of time shaping around the license plate box and making it nice, getting rid of the factory seams. And then I think the biggest modification on the car that probably doesn't get noticed that often, except for people that know what they're looking at, is that the hood has been extended 3/4 of an inch, as well as front fenders, and the splash shield and everything's been welded together into one piece. And that was to get rid of what I thought was an unsightly front aluminum molding, very boring, flat, didn't fit well from the factory. And so we eliminated that by extending the hood, and my father, Kirk Jennings, did that for me. That was a little bit over my head at the time. And so we got that all done. And smoothed the splash shields up front, where the blinker was. We got rid of those and molded those. And then out back, same thing. I took those over to Kurt Hill, and we had visioned the exhaust pipes coming through the lower valances. Well, when you build a car and it's stretched out over 8-9 years, you do things without fitting it on the car, and then you go put the car together for the final assembly and realize that there's no way exhaust pipes are going through all those bumper brackets. So back over to Kurt Hill, and he went ahead and made those nice little bezels with the expanded metal to carry that theme front, back, and side. And so I think in the future there'll be a reverse light that goes behind there to make it all make sense. And then my dad built the grill out of the stock grill. We cut some bars out and added the expanded metal, and he made his own chrome adornments out of half round brass. And then he was really struggling on a center piece. The stock one is very big and has a Chevy emblem in it, and we were trying to get away from that. And he said he woke up in the middle of the night and thought, man, let's put a spray gun head on there. So he ran it by me, and I was like, yeah, dude, that sounds rad. And so we took an old Binks siphon feed and pulled it all apart, and I shouldn't say we, my father did, and that grill is pretty intense for being based off a stock grill. A lot of hours, a lot of stuff behind that. You wouldn't believe how it's all put together, little screws and all sorts of stuff. So my dad did a really killer job on that, and that's a really nice piece on the car. Yeah,
that's the thing I really love about early 60s mild customs is if you're building a 50s car, there can be a formula, like, oh, if it's a Merc, put a DeSoto grill in it. And,
Right.
like, there's so many things that have been done before, but for 60s customs, like, there's really not a rule book. You gotta work a lot harder to make it make sense. And that's what I like so much about the front end. Like, you mentioned extending the hood. Well, it doesn't look like you extended it. It just looks like the way it's supposed to look.
Right.
And that's, to me, the mark of a perfect custom, where you can't even necessarily tell anything's been done. It just looks right.
Yeah, and it does. You're right. It's I think that's the whole purpose of any customizing, is whether it's on a motorcycle, whether it's on a car, 40s, 50s, 60s, is if you can do something that makes it look like it was factory, you've done well.
Yeah.
And so the basis of my car and my father's Cadillac was we built these cars on less is more. You see cars that have everything under the custom world done to them, and they're great. We appreciate all that work, but I think our style has just been derived on trying to do stuff very tastefully and keep it mild and let the car speak for itself.
Yeah.
The paint job on my car, I would say, is pretty darn simple. To other people, it looks extremely complicated, but that car was painted in 3 days. It started on a Friday and was done on a Sunday, minus the striping, which Eric Reyes, a good friend of mine who I drag race with, Eric Reyes Designs in Sonoma, California, has been lettering race cars since 1981. He striped a lot of cars for just about every customizer out there, East Bay Speed and Custom, Daryl Hollenbach. And when he said, hey, I'd like to stripe that car, I said, hey, you're on it, dude. Best in the business. Why am I going to try to struggle through this thing? A lot of straight lines on my car and miles of striping. So he striped it, and pretty proud to say that he striped it, because he's one hell of a striper. He's a great friend, great drag racer. And the guy is, if you can win the Von Dutch Pinstriping Award down in Pomona, that's a pretty huge accomplishment. So,
yeah. The striping on the car is really cool too, because it's not just a panel outline. It's got little back and forth.
Yeah, he does a lot of floaters that create panels within panels.
Yeah. And
for me, I call that free graphics.
Right.
So you give him a paint job, and he's always told me he sees it as a place that he can turn it into a whole different paint job just with a brush.
Yeah. And
it's true. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff for me on motorcycles, and watching his own artwork that he's done, just by adding little floaters and little back and forth pinstriping on it, he creates a whole different feel for a paint job. So it's kind of fun to watch a paint job that you do or anybody does, and then you give it to a guy like Eric and you get it back, and it makes you look like a superstar.
Yeah.
Because he's taking your paint job to the next level. And the paint job was derived off of my love for Winfield and Watson. I don't think you could beat those paint jobs. I mean, looking at books from the past and even the present, I've always dug it, so I knew that I definitely wanted to do a panel paint job on my car, and being able to be lucky enough to paint a car with Gene down in LA and watching that, I just tried to take the two artists and creators from that paved the road for guys like me, and put my own twist on it, and that's how she came out. Was mild panel job. It like I said, it does look complicated, but it's a pretty simple little panel job. And I knew I wanted it blue. Blue's my favorite color, so I went with blues.
Yeah, you showed me the sketch in the back of the shop where you paneled that in 60.
Yeah, that was actually the car that was on the Craigslist ad that the guy said, this is what you could have. And so I printed a bunch of those out and just colored on them, and ironically, that sketch was done probably 8-9 years ago, and I put it up on my spray cabinet just to remind myself of where I thought I was going. And when we did the car, and Reyes was here, and we were putting tape down and everything like that, and the car was done, we had a guy renting our paint booth and had seen my car. And he came out and he said, man, he said that drawing that you did looks identical to your car. So I went back there and looked at it and I'm like, no kidding. It had been embedded in my brain for so long that, we didn't even have that picture in front of us when we were doing the car, and the car came out almost identical to the drawing that I did, way back when. So, but, the interior done by Tony Gomes, Tri-Valley Auto Glass, was really lucky to work with him. We were on a serious time frame to get the car done to debut it at Santa Maria, 2016. And so, I thought it'd be a great idea to put T-Bird interior into a Chevy. Well, everybody says how great it looks and how wonderful it works. Well, it was a lot harder than I thought. I ended up cutting floorboards and sinking seats down, and had help from my buddy Logan Stipe, who works for Lucky 7 out in Antioch, with the back seat. And I got it to a point where it was as far as I could go with it, and then I handed it off to Tony and his crew, and they worked their magic and made it all work. They came up with the back waterfall. I had started on that, took a stock T-Bird waterfall and cut it apart and did a bunch of stuff to it, and I finally pulled it out of the car and threw it on the ground and said, the hell with it, I don't know, let the upholstery guy figure it out, and they did. They cut it into 3 pieces, and so I was glad I saved the piece because I thought it was junk, and they're like, no, we just cut it and do this and do that, and so I was really happy with the way the interior turned out, and that Tony working with me on the project anyways, in such a short notice and a grind to get the thing done. So
yeah, it turned out great. The interior is one of my favorite parts of the car.
It's fun interior. I always wanted pearl white interior, and now that I got it, it's a pain in the ass to keep clean, but it sure looks nice when it is.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Well, we were talking earlier about some of the confusion with the name of the shop. Do you want to help straighten that out?
So the shop that I work for is Bay Auto Body. I've been here 18, 19 years, and when I started doing the custom motorcycles and stuff like that, I actually called myself Paint Innovations, and I thought, that's a great name. I had stickers, I had shirts made, I was just having fun with it. And then when I met Eric Reyes, we were talking, and he says, you do the work, you should sign your name. It should be your name. And I said, okay, that makes sense, because he says if somebody looks at a car and it says Paint Innovations on it, they don't know what is Paint Innovations, who is Paint Innovations. So at that point, I changed it to Kustoms By Jennings, using my name, using the word custom. So my dad has his little shop that he does his metal work and body work in, and he's Jennings Custom Restoration. So it does get confusing, but the whole family has kind of been involved in cars in the custom world, and so I call myself Kustoms By Jennings. My dad calls himself Jennings Custom Restoration. So
you guys do work together a little bit, but it's not the same shop.
we do work together on projects. Obviously he's a metal panel beater and molds all of his own stuff, and then what happens is the car comes over to us and we prime it and block it, and he blocks it, and we prime it and block it, and then me and my brother and Reyes usually tag team on my dad's stuff, and we painted his yellow Cadillac for him and did that. So we work side by side. His shop's right next door to Bay Auto Body, and so it does get confusing. I do get the phone calls, hey, is Kirk available? And it's like, how'd you get my phone number? And, well, I'm the only one that's on the internet with a little website or a Facebook or Instagram. So that's how the Jennings Custom and the Jennings Restoration works. Is same name, a few different words.
Do you have any plans for Kustoms By Jennings?
There's always been plans, but as far as opening a shop in the Bay Area is getting harder and harder because of the rules and regulations, and I see it working here. It's just people are always coming in with their hand out wanting money for a permit so that you can, flush the toilet more than once. So that's kind of steered me away from getting my own full-blown shop, is that, one, it's a lot of money, and two, a lot of regulations. So it's tough. If you want to, I think the best way is, if you're looking to get your own shop, is you buy something that's turnkey or rent something that's already set up, that's permitted and stuff like that. And still, that's it's just a lot of money, and like I said, my passion right now at this point in my life is my family and my drag racing, and the freedom that I have by not being tied down to my own shop and being able to leave and go away for a couple days and do what I love to do at this point in my life is more valuable than saying, hey, I got my own shop, And I've been very lucky to have my boss, Todd here, the owner of the shop, let me basically run my Kustoms by Jennings out of his doors, and he enjoys seeing the artwork come in and get done, and he's got friends that need stuff done and motorcycles, so it all kind of works hand in hand together. So it's not too bad of a deal, for right now.
Yeah, that's cool. One thing I was thinking about sitting here, because it's more of just a collision shop. They don't do custom stuff here.
Correct.
And you do custom stuff on the side. What do you do differently going into that? I mean,
I think it's just it's a lot more fun to work on your old school and be able to think outside of the box. You got a collision job, you have specs that a car needs to go back to. You have a color that comes from a factory that you have to match perfectly, because in the collision trade, we always say pre-accident condition. So the goal is to give you back your car, making it look like nothing ever happened to it. With the custom stuff, there is no rule book, there is no guideline, there's no, certain amount of time that you get to do something. I mean, the grill on my car is a perfect example.
There's no book time on that.
There's 250 hours in the car, or in a grill, and in the collision shop, you got times that you got to make. So I think that's definitely the biggest thing, is that with the customs, the sky's the limit, and especially for me, when it's my own car, I don't have to say, hey, customer, do you like this or do you not? And, with doing collision, you paint a bumper and it's off on the color, and the customer says, I don't, it's not going to fly. And so with the custom world, I think it's a little bit more relaxed, especially when you're doing your own stuff, that you can create and come up with ideas. And just like my side scoops, I thought I was doing it. I was doing it the way that I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Outsiders looking in were like, "Oh no, man, it's the wrong way," And I just stuck with my gut and said, "Well, no, I'm gonna go against the grain and do it." And in the end, it all panned out. It all, people don't look at it and go, "Jesus, you did that the wrong way," And that's what I like about custom, is I don't think there is a right or wrong. There's definitely things that don't look as well as others,
sure,
but that's all in the eye of the beholder. Who's to say that the guy doesn't love what he did to his car, and people may look at it and go, geez, that's hideous, but at the end of the day, it truly lies in the person looking at the car. And that's what I like about the custom world, is that the sky is the limit. You do what you want, you create, and you feed off of other people. I mean, I truly believe that everything's been done. I don't think that anybody's coming up with any new custom, stuff for the custom car world. I mean, look how long it's been going for, and look at all the wonderful craftsmen we've had in this trade. I mean, guys that are, passing away that have been doing this since the 50s and 40s is like, it's hard to do something that hasn't been done, in my eyes.
Definitely.
You can definitely spin it off and try to do something better or tweak it or whatever, but I mean, how many times how many different French headlights have you seen in a car? Well, you've seen a lot, but how many more can you, graft into a car without making it look like it's not right? So I just think that it's all in how you do it and how you present it, and that's kind of where I go with it.
Yeah.
The collision stuff is
just work.
It pays the bills.
Yeah. Do you see building custom cars as more of an art or more of a craft?
I'd say it's definitely a craft. I mean, you gotta have some sort of skill. I think art applies to a guy that could draw a concept or put a cool paint job on the car, but at the end of the day, you definitely have to have a skill to craft these cars. I mean, that's how I see it. Because somebody that doesn't have the experience and that doesn't know how to use the tools, it'd be pretty difficult to build a custom car if you didn't have that skill and craft in your back pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But it was fun to do the car. I had a lot of help. I would no way, shape, or form say that I built that car. Chevy built it. I just played with it and tweaked it, and I got help from every angle, from my wife supporting me, letting me be down here till 2:45 in the morning, to my dad and my brother and Eric Reyes and Eric Lind and Tony and all the people that are involved in it. I want to give credit to everybody that touched that car, because without those people, I couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
It was just like this last weekend at Billetproof. It won Best Interior. And I was really happy that Tony from Tri-Valley, or Acme Auto Interior, was there with me, and we had a nice dinner that night, and I felt it was right that he take that trophy to his shop and show it to his guys that worked on that car and boost morale, and he didn't want to take it, but I forced him to take it, because it's like, that was your doing. That wasn't me. And so I try to share all the accolades and the love that I get with that car with everybody that's been involved. That's important to me.
You learn any big lessons building that one?
Yeah. I mean, I learned that if you're gonna do a car, don't spread it out over 8 years or 9 or whatever it was. That's. I think that for my next project, if I do try to open up a can of worms and get myself back into a full-blown restoration, custom, whatever it may be, is have the time to dedicate to it, have the means to do it, because there's nothing worse than pulling a car in and out of a shop every day, in the rain, bare metal, bare bondo, nowhere to put it, and then, I've wrecked that car probably 3-4 times, pulling it in and out of the shop, hitting shit, trying to put it in holes that it won't fit into, and having to go and redo stuff. And it's like, so I think that's my biggest lesson, is that I won't ever let something go that long. If I can't do it, I won't even start it.
Yeah.
But for me, that was the biggest thing. It was disastrous having to pull a car in bare metal out into the rain and try to cover it with plastic, and the wind blow it off, and having to, go back in, and, I just jammed the car, and I was backing it into the stall, and I didn't have door latches in it, and I was looking over my right shoulder, and the left door swung open, and I put that door right into the opening of the bay door and just wadded up my door, and was like, ugh. So, my advice is don't start a project unless you can dedicate some time and energy to it. I mean, I know shit takes a year to build. I mean, now we have all these TV shows that say you can do it in a week, and I guess you can if you have all the baddest builders in the world together in one place and all the tools and all the product there. I mean, sure, anything's possible, but 6 months to a year is probably about all I'd want to invest, because it's a thorn in your side. You lay in bed, you're thinking about it taking up space, and wondering when you're going to get this or that. And I was pretty proud of myself, though. After taking that car apart and having it apart for that long, I only lost 2 pieces. And they're probably somewhere. I'll probably find them someday. But I lost the 2 lower stainless moldings that go around the cowl of the windshield, and so we had to do the old eBay on those. But that's been my biggest learning.
Yeah.
My lesson learned is you can't drag them out that long.
Yeah.
You know, shit sitting around is no good.
It's kind of funny, like, your dad's advice going into it, don't pull it apart and at least now you have maybe more insight into where he was going with it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, I could have left the glass and the regulators and everything inside that car so that at least when I pull it outside in the rain or whatever, it could have been, you know, somewhat waterproof. But, you know, yeah, that was definitely... I mean, that's how my dad did his Cadillac. My dad brought it home and did like he did with my Cutlass. Is he cleaned it and detailed it, and you know, it was like polishing a turd. It really was. There was rust through the rockers, and you know, he cleaned his interior, and just drove it and enjoyed it. And then he just started doing piece by piece by piece until the point where you cannot avoid breaking the car down.
Yeah.
So yeah, lessons learned, definitely.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Any other projects you got coming up?
My projects are pretty much all off referral, and right now I got a couple motorcycles going for graphics and full bagger stuff, and so I never really know when my next project's going to show up.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, you know, I really do try to steer away from the cars because they're so big, and working at somebody else's shop, I never like to have something here tying up space.
Sure.
So anything I do on a car is basically Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you know, and so I'll do a complete paint job on a car and shove it out and go polish it at somebody's house or have them bring it back and polish it. But I like the motorcycles because they're small, they break down in a bunch of pieces, and I can take them back and forth between the shop and work on them at my house and bring them here and spray them, and they don't tie up much room. So I think, you know, I had told you before, I've always wanted a pre-65 Volkswagen Bug, and I think after doing a car that's 19 feet long, I think I'd like to do a nice round, small car and just have something to cruise in. And you know, I've always wanted one, so I think if there's anything in my future, it'll probably be a Volkswagen Bug. I know it's kind of crazy for the custom world because, you know, people think you just move on to the next custom car, but and that's not to say I won't ever do another one. I just this one wore me out, so
yeah.
I need a little break and then do something a little bit smaller, and something that I could actually keep in my garage.
Right.
So
awesome.
Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Right on. Go okay?
Yeah. Except for the interruptions, but
I might leave them in. They're kind of charming. Like
yeah.
This place, that's unusual. I think that people get along so well when they're so close to each other.
Well, you know, it's funny. Since I've been here so long, these guys have watched me grow. Yeah. Right? You know, not only physically but in the trade, and I think it's good. It's you know, with Jimmy popping in and being the first guy ever to hold a spray gun in my hand. It's funny how the roles reverse, because now he's coming and asking for my advice and my help and what I think and what could he do better. And so I guess it's not always true that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, because he's always said, you know, he learns from me. And you know, the motorcycle shop across the street where the guy Dave came in and asked about his gas tank is I raced go-karts with them when I was a little boy. My dad got me into go-karts, you know, roundy round stuff, and I raced competitively with Rick at R&M Cycles out in front of us and his son Ricky, and we've always been close. Rick's been here for 36 years. He's the oldest tenant in the building, and he refers me a lot of work as well. You know, he's a repair shop, but guys come in with a dent on a gas tank, this and that, and so you know, we all feed each other around here, and I do some days wish that people didn't want to come and ask me questions during the day, because I try to get my shit done, but at the end of the day, it's kind of a compliment that, you know, I have these people wanting my input and advice on some of this stuff. So it all works out, man.
Awesome.
I'm just a spoke in the wheel. I just try to get in where I fit in and do the best I can every day. And whether it's a collision job or whether it's a custom paint job on a Harley, or I'm probably one of the stupider custom painters because I do try to repair other people's stuff, and that's
it's tricky.
It's really hard to go behind somebody that's done a paint job 6 years ago, a custom paint job, and then a guy dings his front fender and wants you to fix a candy paint job with graphics and pinstriping, and you're trying to match colors and fake things, and so I was told by a guy I apprenticed with, Jeff McCann, who painted a lot of stuff for Drone and Ness. Before he passed away, he gave me all of his templates of all his paint jobs he'd ever done, and in digging through that, I actually found a kind of like a release from if you spill gas on your gas tank, filling gas up, and it bubbles around the edge, sorry, bud, that's on you. There's no fixing my paint job. And he was he was a smart painter.
Yeah.
And he told me, Brian, don't ever fix your own stuff. It's a custom paint job. It'll only be good that one time.
Yeah.
And it's the truth. I've even gone back and fixed my own stuff. And when you're dealing with candies and multiple layers and stuff like that, you almost have to start over to make it look right. Yeah, we can fake it and get it back so it's not as noticeable as a dent or a big chip. But when I look at it, I know it's not right. Doesn't look like the day I did it. And so advice to painters, don't repair your own paintwork, don't repair anybody else's paintwork. Too much work.
Yeah.
Not enough money.
Well, that part I definitely gotta leave in. Cool.
So,
Well, thank you so much for your
no
time.
problem, dude.
Well, all right, there you have it. Thank you so much for listening. What do you think? Did you like it? Did you learn something? I know I did. I had a great time getting to know Brian and getting to see his shop out there. It was a really cool experience. Brian's a really hard worker whose work's finally paying off and him getting some recognition for it, and I couldn't be happier. One of the neat things about this podcast has been getting to talk to people that are close to my same age and are wildly successful in custom cars. I find it really inspiring, and I hope you do too. So hey, if you're still listening, there's something you could do that would really help me out. I want to help this show get some more visibility on iTunes, so if you're an iTunes user, if you could go on the Bomb City page there and write a review, that would be really helpful. It's definitely going to help me in the future in lining up more guests for this show. So that's it. That's all I got. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.